So, boy, thank you for, she's my beautiful assistant. She's going to be keeping me safe from everything I talked about today. So what happened was, Tatiana Grossman had started this thing called Universal Limited Art Editions, which actually was her garage. That's where the litho press was, and her basement. That's where the etching press was. And she invited Jasper a couple of times. Finally, he showed up. They hit it off, and they really hit it off, because he ended up doing over 100 prints with ULAE. The first one completed was called Target back in 1960, and we list all the master printers' names. The night we opened this show, a lady walked up to Dick Belger and she said, "I thought this was a Jasper John show." And he said, "It is." She said, "Well, I don't see his name on any of these labels." He says, "Well, we figured everybody knew Jasper Johns was the artist, so we listed all the master printers. Because there's a reason artists go to these print shops and work with master printers. They have some remarkable skills, they have equipment, and they have feedback. My theory is that Johns, once he started printing, I think he got off on the collaboration and the help. There was some frustration involved in that. I do remember, well, I'll show you that the second stone that they worked with was the 0 through 9 project. This took 3 years. I found a letter Jasper wrote to Tatiana. He said, "Do you think we can finish this project before the stone rots?" Those were very limestone. Those slabs last for 100 years, but he was getting apparently a little frustrated with the length of time that it took to do this print. It took a long time because they didn't know what the heck they were doing. Jasper was not a trained printmaker, so he didn't know what you could and couldn't do. And what he did, the very first stone that he picked up, he drew the 0, then he put 0 through 9 at the top, and he told Zig Freedy, may I have a picture of you and Zig Freedy talking about this project opening night. I hope you guys know Zig Freedy.
Yes.
He worked with Blackburn. When Blackburn left, Zig took over as master printer, but he was very young. And no one had ever done a project like Jasper wanted to do. Jasper did this part, and then he told Zig, "I want you to print 10 of those, and then we're going to change it. We're going to put 1 on the same stone, then we're going to put 2, but we're going to leave the top the same." And opening night, Zig was talking to me and May in here, and he said, "I still remember it like yesterday. I was right out of college. He was the most famous artist in America, and he's telling me he wants to do something that, to my knowledge, no one has ever done, and I don't know how to do." And I said, "Well, Zig, why didn't you just tell him, you can't do that with 1 stone?" And Zig, 57 years later, Zig went, "You don't tell an artist you can't do something. You tell an artist he'll figure it out. That's what artists are for, to come up with new ideas." And I thought, well, I guess it's time I learned that lesson. And that's what happened. Jasper eventually talked them into doing this project, and not only did they do it this version, which is the B of C version, so you'll see 10 of 10 on each one of these. There's also B of C, because there were 3 series. This is what the B series looked like, gray ink on this colored paper. The A series was black ink on white paper, and then the C series was actually in color. So it got even more complicated, and that's why it took 3 years. So meanwhile, while the wonderful Zig Freedy, who lives here in Kansas City now, was working on this on Long Island, Jasper went out to Gemini GEL and told the guys out there he wanted to print with lead. And this project took 9 years to finish, because who the heck's ever printed with lead before? So you have to come up with a way to print with lead, which involves a lot of experimentation, a lot of failure, and eventually you figure it out. Not only did they figure out how to print with the lead, but they had to figure out how to display it. So they put plywood inside all these frames as a backing. Now we know lead is toxic. So to my knowledge, these are the only prints that were ever done with lead. Anybody ever seen any other lead prints? Louisiana? Okay. Yay, women. I'm surprised. I'm glad you told me that. I wish I'd known that a long time ago. So now I'm going to put that in there in my tour. Louise Hamilton also did. Give her some credit. You see the one on the left there, that is 0 through 9 in a very different context than the 0 through 9 over here. And then just to the left of that, there's a grid of 0 through 9. And this is one reason Dick Belger collected so much Jasper Johns. Dick says most artists make something, and then they spend the rest of their life thinking, what if I'd have done it this way? When Jasper gets on a project, he goes ahead and does it that way. He does it about 100, 200, God knows how many different versions there are of just the 0 through 9 out there. An American flag, which he did over and over. The light bulb, which he did over and over. The stone that was used for this project is actually in the Museum of Modern Art. It's pretty rare for a master printer to take a stone out of circulation for a couple reasons. They're heavy, they're romantic in that artists for years will draw on the exact same stone, but also they're valuable. But this was such an important project that ULA donated it to MoMA, and it's in their permanent collection now. I had a lady in here one day, and she looked at the project, and she turned to me and she said, I could do that. And I said, if you did that, that would be called forgery. And that is frowned upon in the art world, and it's, in fact, illegal. So I hope that got through to her. It's not really that cool to do somebody else's work. That's the hard part, is coming up with the new idea. Jasper, on the other hand, was full of new ideas. So I've given you a couple of examples here and here. I love the light bulb. People always ask me what's my favorite piece in the show, and I'm partial to the light bulbs. There are several light bulbs in here, mainly because I'm a fan of the Simpsons cartoon show. And Jasper was on The Simpsons one night, and he was unscrewing light bulbs and sticking them in his jacket pocket. And I thought, whoever wrote that episode really knew Jasper, because that's what he did. He stole ideas from everyday life. Okay, any questions about 0 through 9 and the lead release?
What makes the lead release a print?
I get this a lot. Why is this a print? Well, it's actually a hybrid. Except for Louise Nevelson. I don't know anyone else who's ever printed with lead. And I'm sure a sculptor would look at that and say, these are sculptures. But the reason Jasper considered them a print, and the reason Jim and I consider them a print, was because it was conceived as a print. It was executed by printers in a print shop. So for them, this is the way printers print with lead. But just coming to it without knowing the history behind it, I'm sure you can make a very valid case that they're actually sculptures. And I wouldn't argue with those guys either. I try not to argue with people with things they believe in strongly, because I don't think we ever get anywhere. Yeah?
But these are additions, right?
Right, so that's a good point. These were additions. You can addition sculptures too, though. I mean, Rodin's Thinker, there's 12 of those.
Yes.
But these were, let's see, it says 10 of 60 here, the numbers say 5 of 60. There was 60 copies of 6 of these. We have 5 right here, and the 6th one is a flag, which we have in a little section about flags. Now, I mentioned Tatiana had a litho press in her garage. She had an etching press in her basement, and it was 7 years before Jasper ever got around to doing any etching. So these etchings are called first etchings. A guy named Don Stewart talked him into trying out the etching press. So some of these were done with Jasper actually, you know, incising an image into a plate, and then also photo engraving.
So on the lead pieces, is that lead that's embossed?
Yeah, it is very heavy. It's also very delicate, so please don't touch it. They got scratches all over them because people will say, what's this? And believe it or not, they just go ahead and bang on it. I had no idea how many people touched the art until we had a piece that actually had motor oil in it one year. And so many people walked up to me and said, do you have a paper towel? They kept sticking their damn finger in the motor oil. Why, I don't know. Anyway.
So is it super thin lead that got embossed, or is it a real thick piece of lead?
So his question is, how thick is that lead? Well, if you look at the light bulb, you can see it had to be, you know, pretty good thickness to emboss such a large image through it, and same for the numbers. And then the bread is actually a little painting that's over top of the embossed slice of bread.
So you're saying it's not very thick?
Well, it depends on what you mean by thick. It's about like that, so it's heavy.
About an inch?
Yeah, about an inch. I mean, you didn't, you know, if you made it too thin, when you embossed something like the numbers or the light bulb, it would have split the surface. So that's one reason.
So it's almost like a casting, because wouldn't they have to make the image three-dimensional and then put the lead on top and somehow press it?
So it just hit me. He could have gone to a foundry.
Okay.
They probably could have figured this out quicker than they did in the print shop, and it might not have taken 9 years to complete it. But this was so far out of the realm of what printmakers normally do. But that's what Jasper was for. He kind of invaded the printmaking world, and he brought all these new ideas, and it made these guys grow too. It made these guys discover new ways of printing.
It works.
It's like embossing paper, like, because it's just a sheet, so you're embossing it, and you're using the same process.
It was an experimental project, and it went into territory nobody had ever been before, so then definition has become debatable.
Right.
Yeah, this was called first etching, and these were sold as a suite. And it's a lot of the images that Jasper introduced that started as sculpture. So the light bulb started as a sculpture of the light bulb. The Valentine ale can, you got